Hey, I'm John. I'm 22, work in auto detailing, live alone just outside of Chicago, Illinois. It's not glamorous, but I make a decent living and keep to myself mostly. I've known Adam since high school. We bonded over music, old trucks, and getting out of trouble just before it got serious. He moved out of state a few years back, Tennessee, I think. But we've always kept in touch, even if it's just quick messages now and then. 00 p.m., I got a call from him. Not a text, not a voice note, a full-on call. And right away, I knew something was off. "Bro," he said, voice shaky, "can you do me a huge favor?" Like now, yeah, what's up? It's my mom. She called me maybe 10 minutes ago, crying. No, like full-on hysterical. I couldn't make out half of what she was saying. I tried calling her back, but she won't answer. I'm freaking out. I stood up from my couch. "Is she home?" "Yeah, I think so." She sounded like she was. "Nate, I can't get there. I'm in Nashville. You're 20 minutes away from the house. Can you please go check on her?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm going now." I throw on a hoodie, grab my keys, and left. The drive over to their place was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I hadn't seen Diane's mom in over a year. She was always kind, polite, reserved. She wasn't the type to break down like that. Something had to be really wrong. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was on, no sign of movement inside. I walked up slowly, my shoes crunching on a gravel path, and then I saw her. She was sitting on a porch swing in pajama pants and an oversized t-shirt, barefoot. Her arms were wrapped around her knees. Her eyes were red and swollen, cheeks wet. Her hair was a mess. She looked broken. "Diane," I said gently. She looked up, startled at first, then seemed to recognize me. "Nate?" Her voice cracked. "Adam called me. He was worried." "Are you okay?" She didn't answer. Just looked away, wiped at her face roughly, then stood up. Her body swayed slightly, like she hadn't eaten or slept in days. "Can I come in?" I asked. She nodded and pushed open the door. The house was quiet, too quiet. No TV, no music, no humming from the kitchen like I remembered. Just silence and the heavy air of sadness. I followed her to the living room. She sat down, clutching a throw pillow like a shield. I waited. He laughed. She said, finally, just packed his things and walked out. I didn't say anything. He said he met someone younger, prettier, that he didn't want to waste his life anymore. After 12 years, just like that, her voice cracked again. She turned away and stared out the window. I thought we were okay. Not perfect, but okay. And now I just feel like nothing. I sat on the edge of the armchair, unsure of what to say. What can you even say to something like that? Then she looked right at me, eyes still glistening with tears, and whispered, "Take me anywhere." I blinked. What? Anywhere? I can't be here right now. Not in this house, not tonight. She wasn't asking for an escape from reality forever, just from the weight of the night, the betrayal, the silence of the home that suddenly felt too big and too cold. And in that moment, I didn't think. I just stood up and said, "Okay, let's go." She nodded slowly, wiped her face again, grabbed a sweater from the coat rack, and followed me out the door. We didn't know where we were going, only that we were leaving. We didn't speak much during the drive. She sat in the passenger seat, legs pulled up onto the seat, arms wrapped tightly around herself. I kept glancing over just to make sure she was okay, but she never looked at me, just stared out the window like the world outside didn't even register. I didn't know where to take her, so I just drove. After about 20 minutes of silence and empty roads, I pulled into a quiet overlook area near Hoover Reservoir. It wasn't far, but it was peaceful. Wide view of the water, a bench, a few trees, and no people. I parked, killed the engine, and looked over. "You want to step out for a bit?" I asked. She nodded faintly and opened the door. The air was cool and damp, the kind that settles in just after sunset. She walked a few steps toward the railing and leaned against it. I followed but kept some distance, letting her breathe. She took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "We came here once," she said quietly, "years ago. He brought me here after a fight, told me he wanted to start over, said all the right things. I believed him. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure if she needed words or just someone nearby. I gave him everything," she continued. "Tom, love, effort. I forgave things I shouldn't have. I told myself I was lucky to have him, and now I feel like a damn fool." She wiped at her face again, but more out of frustration than sadness now. I could feel a shift in her voice, not just heartbreak, but anger brewing underneath. "Do you know what hurts the most?" She asked. That he didn't even cry, didn't flinch, just walked out like I never mattered. I stepped closer. "You mattered. You do." She turned her head and looked at me for the first time since we left the house. Her eyes were glassy but steady. "Why are you here, Nate?" I paused. "Because Adam asked me to check on you." "That's not what I meant." I stayed quiet. She shook her head slightly and looked back at the water. "I'm sorry. I'm all over the place right now. No need to apologize." "You're allowed to be." She let out a dry laugh. "Allowed? That's funny. I spent so many years asking for permission to feel anything." There was a long pause. Then she whispered again, this time softer. "Thank you for coming." I nodded. "You don't have to go back home tonight. We could find a place to stay, get something to eat. You need to clear your head." She looked at me, hesitant, but then nodded slowly. Yeah, okay." We got back in the car. I searched for a place nearby and found a modest lakeside in just 15 minutes out. Nothing fancy, just one of those roadside spots with wooden decks and view of the water. We checked in, got a double room, no questions asked by the receptionist. Inside, she sat at the bed closest to the window and stared at the view. I ordered us some food, burgers, fries, 2 bottles of water. She barely touched hers, just picked at the bun. "Do you want to talk more?" I asked. "Or just sleep?" She leaned back against the headboard. "Talk maybe tomorrow." "Tonight, I just want the noise in my head to stop." "Then rest," I said. "I'll be right here." She nodded and pulled the blanket over her legs. I took the other bed, lay down fully dressed. The TV was off, the lights dimmed, and for a few minutes, all I could hear was the sound of her quiet breathing. Right before I drifted off, I heard her voice, low, almost like a thought slipping through her lips. "Thank you for not leaving." I didn't answer, I just let the silence say it for me. Rain, that's the first thing I noticed when I opened my eyes. The soft, rhythmic tapping of rain against the window. It wasn't heavy, more like a gentle reminder that the world was still moving, still alive, even when everything inside felt stuck. I sat up slowly. Diane was already awake. She was sitting at the edge of her bed, facing the window she'd changed. Now wearing jeans and a light gray long-sleeve shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun. From behind, she looked like someone trying to hold it together, and somehow doing it. "Morning," I said, rubbing the sleeve from my eyes. She turned her head, a soft smirk on her face. "You snore." I let out a short laugh. "You sure it wasn't the fridge?" She shook her head. "Nope, definitely you." I stretched, my back cracking in 3 different places. "How are you feeling?" She stood up and walked to the window. Paused there a second before answering. "Still like, but maybe a little less than yesterday." I nodded. "That's something." There was a long silence. I didn't rush it. I figured if she wanted to talk, she would. When we finally left the inn, it was just past 10. I asked her if she wanted to grab breakfast or head home, but she just shook her head. "Not yet," she said. "I can't go back there yet." I looked at her. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked tired, but firm, like someone who'd made a quiet decision and was standing by it. "All right," I said. "So where to?" She shrugged. "Let's just drive." And that's exactly what we did. We didn't even turn on the radio for the first half hour. The windshield wipers moved steadily, the rain a constant backdrop to the silence between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It just was. After about an hour, we pulled off the main road for gas. I filled up the tank while she went inside. She came back out with 2 coffees and a bag of trail mix. "For the road," she said. We kept driving. At some point, she rolled down the window and stuck her arm out into the wind. Her hair blew everywhere. She looked over at me and smiled for real for the first time. "You always this good just dropping everything and disappearing?" I shook my head, not even close. "I usually plan my lunch breaks." "Well," she said, leaning back, "I think we're both overdue for a little aimlessness." Around noon, we ended up in Hocking Hills. I didn't plan it. The signs just appeared, and I took the turn. We found a small trailhead, parked the car, and walked. The rain had stopped by then, but everything was still damp and smelled like earth and leaves. We didn't talk much while hiking, just walked side by side in silence. It was steep in places, but not too hard. Eventually, we reached a clearing that overlooked a valley, trees stretching forever, fog curling up through them like smoke. Diane stood at the edge of the railing, her arms spread wide like she was catching her breath from life. "I haven't felt like myself in years," she said quietly. I didn't reply. There was nothing I could say that would feel right. We sat on a wooden bench nearby. She talked more this time, not about the betrayal, we'd covered that, but about the years before it. The slow erosion of respect. The feeling of disappearing inside someone else's expectations. I kept trying to be less needy, less loud. This emotional, just so he wouldn't leave, she said, and he left anyway. She turned to me. I was invisible for so long, Nate. I didn't even notice when I stopped existing. That hit something in me. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just listened. We stayed out there for another hour. Then we got back in the car and drove until the sun started to dip. We found a cozy little lodge, one of those places with pine wood walls and old quilts on the beds. Nothing fancy but warm. Safe. Inside, we ordered food to the room, pizza and 2 sodas. She laughed when the delivery guy said, "Enjoy your romantic getaway." I told him it's not like that, and he just winked and walked off. We ate sitting cross-legged on our beds, watching the fire flicker in the small stone fireplace across the room. She brought out a deck of cards she had in her purse, and we played Go Fish like we were teenagers again. There was something easy about it sometime after the 3rd round. I caught her watching me. "What?" I asked, half grinning. She looked down, then back up again. "You're kind and patient." I didn't realize how much I missed that. I didn't know how to answer. I just held her gaze. Then she added, quieter this time. You make me feel like I'm still a woman, not just someone's leftover. I stood up and walked to the window. She followed me, stood beside me. The woods outside were dark, quiet, still wet from the day's rain. I don't know what this is, she said. I don't want to ruin it. I just know that right now this being here feels better than anything has in a long time. I turned to her. Me too. She moved closer, slowly. No rush, no panic, just closeness. Her hand found mine. She leaned in, and that's when we kissed. Not out of passion, not out of lust, but out of shared brokenness, out of healing. That night, we stayed in the same bed. She curled up beside me, head on my chest, fingers tracing circles over my arm. Neither of us said the word love. It wasn't that. It was comfort. It was the feeling of being human again. Just before she drifted off, she whispered, "Thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be alive." The next morning, I woke up before she did. The room was still dim. Heavy curtains kept the sun mostly out. And for a second, I just lay there listening to her breathe. She looked peaceful, curled up under the quilt, her hair messy, face soft and relaxed. It didn't feel like real life. It felt like we'd stepped outside of everything, responsibilities, pain, the past, and found a bubble the world hadn't touched yet. I slipped out of bed quietly, pulled on a hoodie, and stepped outside onto the small wooden deck that overlooked the woods. The air was cold and crisp. Birds chirped somewhere out in the trees. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had somewhere to be or something to do. I just stood there breathing. She came out about 20 minutes later, wrapped in a blanket, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. One for her, one for me. "You disappeared," she said softly. "Didn't want to wake you." She handed me the mug and leaned against the railing. I forgot what silence like this felt like. I nodded. "It's nice." She sipped her coffee. "It's strange. I feel like we've known each other forever, and at the same time, like this is the first time we've really met." I get that. There was a long pause, and she looked at me and said, "Do you regret last night?" I shook my head. "No, not even a little." "Me neither." She smiled. Not the tired, forced kind I'd seen on her face yesterday. This one was real. Gentle, present. We decided to stay one more day, not because we had plans, but because neither of us wanted to break whatever this was just yet. We walked through the woods, talked about stupid things, favorite movies, music from the 90s, terrible first dates. Laughed a lot more than I expected. At one point, we stopped by a small waterfall. She took her shoes off, rolled up her jeans, and stepped into the freezing water. "You're insane," I said. She splashed me. "Come in, coward." I did. It was freezing. We stayed maybe 2 minutes before running back to the rocks, shivering and laughing like kids. She laid back on a flat stone, letting the sun hit her face. "I feel 25 again," she said. "Or maybe just not 45. "You don't look 45, I said without thinking. She opened one and gave me a look. "Careful, you're making it easy to fall for you." We both laughed, but then we quieted. It was the kind of moment where everything felt suspended. We were 2 people in the middle of nowhere, barefoot and wet. Sun on our skin, no history in the way. Later, back at the lodge, we ordered dinner from a diner down the road. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, pie. We ate in bed with a movie playing in the background. I don't even remember what the movie was. I just remember her sitting close, her shoulder against mine, our hands brushing every few minutes like they were checking if it was still okay. When the movie ended, the lights were low, the fire was dimming. She looked over at me and said, "You make me feel like I matter again." "You do," I said. "You always did." "I don't want this to be a fantasy," she said. "I don't want to pretend we're something we're not. But I also don't want to let go of this just because it's complicated." "I'm not asking for forever," I said. "I just want to be here, with you, for however long this lasts." She leaned in and kissed me, slow, sure, grounded. That night was different from the first. It wasn't about comfort or pain. It was about choosing each other, fully aware of the consequences. We knew it couldn't last. We knew we weren't built for a future, but we also knew that this brief, beautiful thing was ours. We stayed up late, talking, kissing, holding each other. At some point, she rested her forehead against mine and whispered, "I needed this more than I knew. Not the sex, the being wanted, the being held." "You deserve that every day," I said. I forgot what it feels like to be a woman. Not a wife, not a mother, just a woman. I didn't answer, I just pulled her closer. We fell asleep, wrapped around each other. No alarms, no clocks, no rush to leave. Just two people in the middle of nowhere, giving each other permission to heal. We left the lodge 2 days later, no one said out loud, but we both felt it. The ending. It hung in the air like morning fog. Not heavy, but undeniable. There was no argument, no tension, just the quiet understanding that what we had existed in a bubble, and that bubble couldn't last forever. We packed in silence, folding clothes carefully, placing toothbrushes back into travel bags like it mattered. Diane stood by the mirror longer than she needed to, adjusting her hair, fixing her earrings, then just staring at herself. "I look different," she said softly. I looked up. "You do, happier." She smiled, but there was something sad in it. Lighter, maybe. "I feel like myself again, or maybe someone I forgot I was." We checked out just after 10 a.m. The woman at the front desk gave us a knowing smile, but neither of us reacted. We were already slipping back into reality. The drive back was quiet. No music this time, just the sound of the road and our thoughts. Diane stared out the window, and I let her. I didn't want to fill the silence with empty words. This silence felt sacred. When we finally pulled up in front of her house, she didn't move right away, just sat there with her hands folded in her lap, looking at the porch like it belonged to someone else. "I don't want to go inside yet," she said. I nodded. "We can sit here as long as you need." But after a minute, she unbuckled her seatbelt. "No, I need to face it. I have to." She opened the door, stepped out, then paused. "Come in with me?" Of course. Inside, everything was exactly how we'd left it. The air felt different, though, not so heavy. The sadness had lifted just enough to let light in. She walked slowly through the living room, touched the edge of the couch, the picture frames on the shelf. Then she turned to me. "I've been thinking," she said, "about everything. Yeah, I can't pretend this wasn't real. I don't want to. But I also know this isn't something we can stretch into a different shape and expect it to fit." I nodded. "I know," she took a deep breath. "You helped me feel alive again. Wanted, human, and I don't have the words to thank you for that. But I also know we can't go on like this." I stepped closer. "You don't owe me anything." "It's not about owing," she said. "It's about honesty. I needed you. You showed up, you stayed, you gave me something beautiful. But now I need to stand on my own." I looked at her, really looked. She was stronger, steadier. Her eyes weren't full of tears now. They were clear, focused. "I get it," I said. She reached out, took my hand, held it for a long moment. "This will stay with me," she whispered. "All of it, every minute." "Me too." She pulled me into a hug. Tight, warm, final. Then she pulled back and kissed me on the cheek. "I'm gonna be okay now." I believed her. I walked to the door, looked back one last time. She was standing in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, smiling just a little. I got in my car and drove home. The roads looked the same, but something to me had shifted. Not in a tragic way, not in a hopeless way, just different. Like I'd lived something real and rare, and now I had to let it go. Adam texted me the next day. Just one line. "Thanks for going over. She said you really helped."